Excellencies and Ambassador, distinguished guests and delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. We are very excited to welcome you all in today's roundtable. The moderator for today is Major General N M Muniruzzaman, NDC PSC retired, President BIPSS, and the expert panelists who will be in conversation today are Dr. Iftekhar Ahmed Chowdhury, former advisor, Foreign Minister, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Government of Bangladesh, Mr. Shafqat Munir, Head of the Bangladesh Center for Terrorism Research, BCTR, and Senior Research Fellow, BIPSS, and Ms. Iffat Anjum, Assistant Professor, Department of International Relations, Bangladesh University of Professionals. Now I would like to request the moderator to continue with the rest of the session. Thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to all of you to our monthly roundtable on a critical issue. And before I do that, a Happy New Year to all of you. As we embark on a new year of 2025, profound changes are taking place in the international system. They are driven by advancement in technology, a shifting dynamics of geopolitics and geoeconomics, and concerns over ongoing conflicts, environmental challenges, and many more. All these challenges and the new opportunities that arise in the international system need to be understood. We don't profess to be strategic astrologers, but as students of geopolitics and geoeconomics and security, we are certainly here to make some predictions how things might shape in the coming year and beyond. And to do that, we have an excellent panel this morning who are going to talk to you on the issues that I just mentioned, after which we shall open the floor for your comments and discussion. We shall start with Dr. Iftekhar, and Dr. Chowdhury, you have the floor for the next 7 to 8 minutes.
It might take a couple of minutes longer than that, General. Good morning, ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen. No surprise that the most significant recent occurrence in global geopolitics to date has been the commencement of Trump 2.0 in the U.S. administration. Incidentally, some researchers delving into what is called big history had forecast a somewhat dismal picture of disquiet for America this century. Over 3 decades ago, Dr. Jack Gladstone proffered a model demonstrating how population changes can alter popular behavior. This is called the demographic structural theory. He predicted a disruptive and populist American leadership in the 21st century. His academic colleague, Dr. Peter Turchin, an expert in cliodynamics, a method that applies mathematical quantitative rigor to socio-historical research, reached a disturbing extrapolation. He showed that due to societal imbalances, America will be hurtling towards a turbulent 2020s. It will be an era of huge societal dislocations, no matter who governs. There's some concern that facts in America, the rise of Make America Great Again, the burgeoning backlash against what Elon Musk has called the woke virus, can signal a divisive turmoil. We know what happens in America does not remain confined to America. So now, in the mid-decade of 2025, might the world be confronting trying times? The return of President Trump to the White House, to my mind, points to a trifecta in foreign policy. The 3 elements are, first, national self-interest is to be achieved through not by spreading the so-called liberal values like democracy, pluralism, and human rights, which might entail foreign entanglements in a milieu where friends and foes alike would be equally subservient to perceived U.S. U.S. interests. Second, foreign relations would be entirely transactional, including making of deals that would put America first and foremost, often solely, which would also imply selling of arms to allies rather than expanding military footprint abroad. And third, security would be advanced by denying foreign powers close proximity to America, a replay of the Monroe Doctrine of 1823 that could be called Donroe Doctrine after Donald Trump, which also explains the accusative tendencies vis-à-vis Greenland and Panama. In the meanwhile, we've also been witnessing the steady and inexorable rise of China, economically and militarily. What its leader Xi Jinping calls Zhangguomeng, or China Dream, also encompasses a trifecta. Its three broad elements are, first, great power equality, that is between the US and China, to describe which the British historian Neil Ferguson has coined the term chimerica. Two, non-confrontation, that is achieving goals without actual conflict. And three, win-win cooperation, of which the projected enterprise is the massive Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI. The Greek philosopher Thucydides had warned that miscalculation between a new rising power and an old one could spark a war. Such miscalculation is possible between the US and China over Taiwan. But a conventional war cannot be won by either US or China. But then, inevitably, the option of a nuclear escalation would arise. But in no way would the total annihilation of, say, Shanghai and Guangzhou on one side and San Francisco and Los Angeles on the other would be acceptable in lieu of a victory on the Taiwan issue. It is not high strategy, it is common sense. One saving grace could be Mr. Trump's weapon of choice. He prefers tariffs over tanks. He says tariff is the most beautiful word in the dictionary. Also, President Trump and Pete Hegseth, who's the nominee for Defense Secretary, have plans of a domestic use of the military than the traditional deployment overseas. Mr. Trump has also described Taiwan as growing rich by stealing, as he said, microchip production. He also said Taiwan is the apple of Xi Jinping's eyes, and it is 9,500 miles away from the United States and only 68 miles from China. Not good news for Taiwan. While the world would not become a condominium between the two great powers, that is the US and China, indeed the recent Russo-Iranian 20-year treaty and the European response to Mr. Trump's Greenland aspiration amply demonstrate that the fact remains a world order presided and overseen by the United Nations and multilateral institutions would be severely eroded. We will be probably back to what is called an anarchical international society of the Hedley Bull construct, where sovereign equality will be but a theoretical fiction. For those of you who remember Plato, this would mean a Thrasymachien world where might is right, and the state would have different levels of sovereignty depending on the military capability of each. It would be a Hobbesian world where life could be nasty, brutish, and short. That would also mean countries scrambling to achieve the whole balance of power within and beyond each region to enhance their tactical and strategic capabilities. 2025 might not look terribly different from 1925. That was the period brilliantly analyzed by Edward Hallett Carr in his book, 20 Years Crisis. Carr was a British diplomat who taught at Aberystwyth in Wales, Aberystwyth College, now a university, of course. And he described the period in Europe between 1919 and 39 and explained how what made it hurtle towards the disastrous conflagrations of the Second World War. The study of international relations in the post-Cold War period have been dominated by three schools of thought. One is Francis Fukuyama's end of history theory, where he argues that the historical progression of struggle between ideologies largely ended with the triumph of liberal democracy over communist totalitarianism signaled by the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. That is Fukuyama's end of history thesis. The second was Samuel Huntington's Clash of Civilizations thesis, whereby future wars would be fought not between countries, but between cultures, as exemplified by the war against terrorism. The third is the concept of offensive realism of John Mearsheimer, who argues that it is the need for security and survival that makes states aggressive power maximizers, forever causing the states to behave in a way designed to diminish their competitive strength and enhance their own. In contemporary times, I would add to the states significant non-state actors like the Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Arakan army. Today, in 1925, in conclusion, my thesis would be that we are trending to advance towards a situation where each nation would need more and more to tend for itself and protect its own interests in every which way it can. We must all, including Bangladesh, have faith in God, of course, but we must also, at the same time, without fail, keep our powder dry. I thank you.
Chowdhury, for giving us an explicit, particularly about Trump 2.0. And you very rightly say that whatever happens in the United States does not remain in the United States. It has implications beyond the borders of the United States. In the last 48 hours, significant developments have taken place after Trump's inauguration. Number one is withdrawal from the Paris Peace Agreement that has significant and profound implications for the global climate change domain. We also see an increased possibility of Sino-US rivalry and confrontation in all kinds of places, in trade, in foreign relations, in influence operations, and that is the manifestation we saw that on the first day of business of the new government, it was a Quad Foreign Ministers meeting. And as I read the declaration that came out of the state, it says emphasis on two areas: security of the technology of states and security of the maritime domain. So those are the two key areas where we shall see concentration coming in the days. As a small state like Bangladesh, we all must be prepared for a bumpy ride. The international system is going to change in dramatic ways that we are not accustomed to. So we must follow them very carefully, as we are doing it today, and this must continue over the next weeks and months. For our next deliberation, I shall invite Iffat Anjum from the Bangladesh University Professionals. And Iffat, you have the floor.
Good morning, everyone. Allow me to begin by expressing my earnest gratitude for inviting me here. I feel extremely privileged to be a part of this dynamic gathering. The topic of our today's discussion is extremely relevant and timely. Global trends of 2025. As we have experienced dramatic transitions in recent years, not only globally, but also regionally and nationally. So to be more precise, I'll be focusing on some of the regional and economic trends that might design the economic and security landscape for our present and future. In terms of regional trends, if I want to highlight about South Asia. South Asia, which is considered as home to around 1/4 people of this world, too many questions are there for South Asia to answer in coming 2025. South Asia, which has encountered numbers of dramatic political transitions, it has witnessed border tensions, it has witnessed economic inflation and unemployment problem, and a surge of movements. And we can say that we are in a transitional period. We are yet to see that how South Asia adjusts with the new Trump regime 2.0. We are yet to see that how we adjust with the economic instabilities. If I incept from Bangladesh, we have envisioned Bangladesh 2.0. Our interim government has pledged to reform the political institutions and economic instabilities. But we are yet to see that how we would deal with the radical elements and other instabilities. In Afghanistan, we are likely to witness the continued Taliban regime, and we are to witness that how they are dealing with the legitimacy concerns. In terms of Sri Lanka, quote unquote, a left-leaning regime, which is newly elected, we are yet to see that how it will deal with the economic crisis and the internal political unrest. Similar to that in Pakistan, in 2024, we have encountered dramatic events in their election, and the existing regime is still on a test to justify their credibility, I would say. In terms of India, we have seen that the Modi government has taken over for its third tenure. But BJP, I would say it was certainly circumcised in Lok Sabha in terms of establishing its majority dominance. So in that case, a strong opposition in the parliament, to what extent it would be credible to establish the democratic culture in South Asia. That is also we are to see in terms of regional trends. We have certainly experienced a numbers of uncertainties. We have encountered political tensions induced by security tensions induced by Arakan army. We have seen militancy in federally administered tribal areas of Pakistan and in the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan. In parallel, we have also seen tensions between Indian and Pakistan borders. So all these, with all these uncertainties, we are yet to see that how Bangladesh, along with its neighbors, is yet to test their credibility regionally within the tussle between USA and China. As we have already seen that India has signed its border patrolling agreement with China in last October. So we are to see that how rationally South Asia can balance between that. Now, if I move on to some of the economic trends of South Asia, there are some glorifying statistics in terms of its recent economic development. World Bank tends to say that it is accredited as one of the emerging economies, emerging market and developing economy. The growth has unlocked to be around 6.4%. South Asia is blessed with its juvenile majority population. But to what extent we are being able to utilize the democratic dividend, that is to see. I'll come to that point later. About the economic trends of South Asia, if I would like to mention about some of the challenges that we have encountered in 2024 and we are likely to see in 2025. The first PW would be inflation. Inflation, which is according to World Economic Forum, which is considered as the major challenge for 2025 for Bangladesh and some of its neighboring countries. So in terms of inflation, if we tend to dive into the reasons, the supply side change, that would be one of the core derivative in terms of inducing inflation. Foods are not available. We are encountering energy scarcity in terms of the ongoing political instabilities. We are encountering crisis in fuels, we are encountering price hikes in fuel and other oil and other commodities. We have experienced currency depreciation. And if we tend to dive into the measures that we have adopted in recent time, we can see that to curb the inflation rate, our central banks has adopted repo rates. It has increased repo rates. Along with this, it has adopted and increased interest rates. We have adopted a crawling peg system in 2024 to adjust the stability of the money of Dhaka. At the same time, we are trying to impose restrictive monetary policies, and we are trying to adopt not only tax rates, but also tax nets. So we are expanding tax nets. But as a result, what we are experiencing, the consumers are experiencing some overburdening consequences in terms of that. And at the same time, our business and our domestic industries are yet to be hot. Within all these uncertainties, apart from inflation, I would like to indicate towards the matter that I have induced before about the demographic dividend that we have. We have majorities of juvenile population who are at the age to be employed, but we are not being able to utilize that. One of the major reasons behind this is that we are not being able to equally employ all of our genders as workforce. In terms of South Asia, in the year of 2024, 33% women, which is 1/3 of the total working age women, were employed, in comparison to 77% of their male counterparts. And in terms of married women, the statistic would be only 12% without having the burden of children. That means women, those who are not having children. Within such scenario, it seems that marriage had emerged as a penalty for some of one part of the gender and as a premium for their counterparts. So, and also not only for men, but also the other privileged genders. In that case, it's more like a Stockholm syndrome, that we are the South Asian societal stereotypes. We have accepted the stereotypes as societal norms. That is another concerning factor that we are to deal with in terms of economic challenges in 2025. Apart from that, the climate issues induced by climate in South Asia. We have encountered frequently the scourges of extreme weather induced by heat waves, floods, and we have seen their direct impacts on productivity and or forced migration. Apart from climate, if we tend to see the global trends of sealing borders, not only sealing borders for commodities, but also sealing border for goods. In the renewed regime of Trump, we have already experienced multiple threats of imposing heightened threats on commodities from specific countries, especially from China and India. If we see the trend of counter-tariff trends, in that case, we are likely to see that to what extent we can deal with renewed trade war 2.0. Not only for goods, for people, we have seen restrictive migrant policies, and intentions of them has been spelled out in the election campaigns of the Western countries. And not only in North America, in Europe, especially after the refugee crisis, we have seen that the immigration policies and the common asylum and security policies had strongly been debated because of the sealing of the borders. Even in terms of Middle East, if we consider about the context of our labor migrants, they are also planning to look for alternative options instead of depending on laborers from these particular regions. They are imposing labor restrictive policies like kafala, like increasing ikama fees, and also they have moved for alternative options like automated labor industries. So all these trends can emerge as concerning factors in terms of remittance and in terms of migration, in terms of South Asia. Apart from that, if we tend to think about some pathways that how we can deal with the existing economic and the regional crisis that I have mentioned, as I have said that we are in a transitional period. So we might not come up with substantive solution in terms of all these issues that I have discussed, but in terms of monetary issues, better fiscal and monetary policy management, and not only in terms of formal economic management, informal economic sectors needs to be considered with more priorities. Over the top exchange and the informal sectors, that needs to have a better concentration on. Apart from that, we can think of a better regional cooperation. We know about the context of SAARC. It is usually with a very derogatory stance, it is spelled out to be paralyzed. But still we can hope for, with an optimistic mind, as already our current foreign advisor has spelled out about the likely revision of SAARC and its credibility. So in terms of cooperation, if not over-ambitious, but also with a little hope, we can expect to have a better leverage from these regional cooperative platforms. We can also revisit the memories or revisit the ambitions when we have planned for intelligence sharing within SAARC, within the frameworks of SAARC Pole. We can also think of the regional podiums or regional initiatives that had been adopted within the framework of a SAARC network for sharing nuclear energy and nuclear security issues. Apart from that, in terms of migration challenges that I have just mentioned, not only sending a number or greater number of people and concentration of inflows on remittances should not be our prior concern. Apart from that, we can have or we can plan for regional cooperation among the migration sending countries in South Asia so that we can initiate some effective leverages for the workers who are generating remittances and who are frequently encountering treatments in Middle East particularly, where they are substantially not matching with the standards of decent work clause of ILO. So from my side, I think this concentrating on these factors or these trends in terms of our regional and economic trends can be some optimistic aspirations for 2025, and not only having just abstract plans with concrete and substantive, effective should be our concentration for the upcoming days, because as Henry Kissinger has once said that if you are going anywhere without any intention in mind, then the roads will lead you to nowhere. So I think with the concerns of transition in mind, we can hope for optimism for a better 2025, not even the best one. Thank you.
Iffat, thank you for your presentation. As I can read from your presentation, there are key concerns both in geopolitics and geoeconomics. In geoeconomic dynamics, we see there is a shifting pattern of alliances that is coming about in 2025. We are also likely to see increased challenges of transatlantic cooperation that exist today, both in the form of the military alliances and other alliances. we are likely to see formation of new alliances, which are not in the Western camp. They are likely to challenge the Western dominance of the international system. And that is a symptom that is already happening. There is a growth of alternationalism that will challenge international cooperation. I also see that many of the multilateral institutions will be challenged, and the indication that the United States has pulled out of WHO is a clear indication that many of the multilateral institutions will have to face new challenges from existing power. In terms of economic challenges, as I can see that new protectionism is coming about that will impede international trade and flow of goods, and particularly for nations, small states like Bangladesh, that could be a serious challenge to our international trading preferences. So altogether, we are in uncharted territory, uncharted water, and we must be prepared for all the changes that are about to come. I shall now turn it over to our next speaker, Shafqat. And to Shafqat, I shall particularly ask you to educate us on the technological domain. That is the key area for 2025 where we should concentrate, because technology will completely change the way we do business in international relations, in international business, and in geopolitics. It's beginning to shape the international system in a way that we are completely not accustomed to. So Shafqat, you have the floor.
Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. It is a bit of a ritual for BIPSS that every year in January we gather together to examine the global trends. We have been doing it for a number of years, and the tradition, I'm very happy to say, continues. When we look at 2025, as the previous two esteemed speakers have highlighted, we are, of course, a lot of our discourse is shaped by the changes that happen in the United States and in the international system. But I would proffer that as we navigate through 2025, the global landscape is marked by both technological advancement and complex geopolitical dynamics. And it is the interplay between technology, cybersecurity, and international relations, which is evolving rapidly, that will ultimately define on how we look at the trends that shape 2025. When we look at the geopolitical landscape, my argument is that 2025 would be characterized by fragmentation. And one of the primary drivers of this fragmentation is the intensifying landscape of international trade characterized by commercial wars. The ongoing tensions between major economies, particularly the U.S. and China, exemplify this trend. Protectionism, tariffs, trade barriers, and economic sanctions have become common tools in a broader strategy to assert dominance and protect national interests. So I think over the last 72 hours, we have seen how the tariff issue has dominated the international discourse. Commercial conflicts will also force nations to reassess their foreign policies and trade partnerships. Countries are increasingly seeking to align themselves with like-minded states, further polarizing the international community into blocs that may not necessarily share common interests beyond economic gain. So I think we're entering into a completely different paradigm, and it's very important for us, because ultimately whatever we discuss in the room, it has to be relevant to the country that we belong to, Bangladesh. And I think given the changes that are happening, we have to be very careful about how we navigate these changes. Apart from the whole issue of commercial wars, we also need to look at the other issues of instability which are likely to plague the world. The global rise in populism, which is now a common dominating trend across various continents, is likely to continue in 2025. And how populist pressures will ultimately impact on different countries, different regions, is something that we have to really carefully observe. Climate change, there's been a lot of talk about climate change, although the US has withdrawn from the Paris Agreement, but climate change, not just in terms of the fact that our temperatures are much higher than before, but the geopolitics of climate change, the security of climate change, I think that the security dimension of climate change, that is something that's going to really matter over the course of the year. We now look at climate change as a threat multiplier, exacerbating existing geopolitical tensions and influencing migration patterns, resource scarcity, and conflict. For instance, an estimated 25 million people were displaced due to climate disasters in 2024, a number expected to further rise in 2025. We also have the whole dimension of Arctic security, as the Arctic emerges as a region of contestation for resource exploitation, with countries like Russia, Canada, and US increasing their presence. We are probably likely to see more gray zone warfare and hybrid warfare throughout 2025. I know we have talked about gray zone warfare in the past under this platform, but it is an issue that is fast attaining more prominence in the security discourse. I know in Bangladesh today it's quite normal to pretend that terrorism is a thing of the past, but the reality is that terrorism and militancy, violent extremism still continues to be a major global challenge. And if we look at the statistics in various parts of the world, the number of terrorist attacks over the course of 2024 has been quite high. But let me now turn to an aspect which is not often discussed in Dhaka, that is the geopolitics of technology. And the geopolitics of technology is a theme that is likely to dominate throughout 2025. If you look at the various reports that have emerged at the beginning of the year, all those reports, including the ones by economists, talk about the technological rivalry and geopolitics of technology. So I would like to sort of look at some very broad themes within that, the whole issue of geopolitics and technology. First of all, the rise of digital sovereignty. Nations are increasingly asserting control over their digital spaces, seeking to regulate data flows, protect critical infrastructure, and promote domestic tech industries. This could potentially lead to fragmentation of the internet and further exacerbate trade tensions. As we enter the intelligence age, we are also entering an era of AI supremacy as a new arms race. Artificial intelligence is seen as a strategic technology with military and economic applications, and competition among major powers to develop and control AI is intensifying, raising concerns about ethical considerations and potential misuse. Cybersecurity will increasingly be weaponized, with cyber attacks increasingly used as tools of geopolitical influence and warfare. Nations are investing heavily in cyber capabilities to defend their networks and conduct offensive operations. Data, ladies and gentlemen, is the new oil of the 21st century. And control over data is a source of power. Therefore, governments and corporations are vying for access to and control over vast troves of data, raising privacy and security concerns. We are also entering an era of techno-nationalism, where growing trend towards protectionism and nationalism in technology policy, with countries prioritizing domestic industries and restricting access to foreign technologies. And that is a theme that will dominate across regions, across countries. We also have the whole issue of the geopolitics of 5G and beyond, with the deployment of 5G and future wireless technologies potentially becoming a major geopolitical background. We have already seen the tussle between whether Huawei should come and implement 5G or other companies should, but this is likely to intensify. And for most countries who are increasingly dependent on technology for their economic advancement, this is something we have to pay close attention to. There is also an ethical dilemma developing over the use of emerging technologies. The rapid development of technologies like AI, gene editing, and autonomous weapons raises very complex ethical questions about their use and potential consequence. And as the reliance on technology increases, these questions will also intensify. While we talk about the internet as the great equalizer, we also have to talk about the digital divide, as the gap between developed and developing countries in access to technology and digital skills is widening, exacerbating existing inequalities and creating new challenges. Despite the geopolitical competition, there is a need for countries to cooperate to address global challenges related to technology. But as techno-nationalism increases, perhaps I would argue that cooperation will become more difficult. We also have to talk about the evolving role of non-state actors, because technology, if it can be used by states, could also be used by non-states. And whether technology, the disruptive nature of technology, could be used by some of these non-state actors for nefarious purposes is something we also have to keep a close eye on. President Biden, in his parting address, talked about a new techno-oligarchy or a techno-industrial complex taking over the United States. And I think we are seeing increasingly across the world, the increasingly powerful players of technology are tech companies. And how they assert their dominance over decision-making, over policy-making is something we have to watch very carefully. As a country which is extremely dependent on international trade for its economic well-being and survival, the commercial conflicts that are going to rage across the world in 2025 has significant implications for Bangladesh. So I think it is very important for us in Bangladesh to pay very close attention to these global trends, and especially the technological trends that are emerging, because that will also directly impact us. We also have to see, I mean, the previous speakers have already talked about it, that how the Sino-US rivalry will also dominate the international discourse. And with the onset of the new administration in the United States, it is quite likely that the Sino-US rivalry or the Sino-US competition will actually intensify. And how that has an impact on South Asia is a key concern for us, because we also have the whole specter of competition between India and China. And how that will play out in this region is something we have to watch very carefully, at least from the perch in Bangladesh. So those are some of the issues that I wanted to highlight, and we can have further conversation over discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Shafqat. Taking cue from your last statement that Bangladesh foreign policy will have to, again, find new grounds of balancing between the existing superpower, United States, and the emerging superpower, China. So the increasing tension that is developing in the Sino-US relationship will have definite impact on our foreign policy formulation. Technology is going to be the key factor of competition in 2025. And those of you who have seen the inauguration of Donald Trump, you must have marked that the people sitting in the right places, right behind the podium, were not political heavyweights, but they were technology heavyweights. It was the Mark Zuckerbergs, it was Tim, it was Sundar Pichai. Those are the people who are at the high table, and they are the ones who are going to dominate the new techno battle that is going to emerge in 2025. So even as a small state, that has implications for countries like Bangladesh. In terms of supranationalism, technology is also going to dominate how nations behave and link with one another. We are particularly seeing the rise and the power of AI. AI will dominate the international scene in 2025 and beyond. And in this, the two powers who are competing fiercely are China and the United States. In Bangladesh, we are lagging behind in this. We need to understand the implications of application of AI if we want to live by the international standards of the coming age. So those are the takeaways from your presentation, Shafqat, and I thank you for your deliberation. It is now a more interesting part of our discourse today when I open up the floor for your questions and comments. Please feel free to ask questions or give a comment, and please indicate if you want to do that. I will give you the floor. When I give you the floor, please introduce yourself and then ask the question. Please be very brief that we can take as many questions as possible. All right. Okay. The first question, Major Nasir.
Thank you so much for the respected panel discussion. And thank you so much for your deliberation. My question would be to Mr. Shafqat Munir, specifically, as you had been very precisely pointing on the advancement of AI. In relation to that, the recent trend of the social media influencers, in many cases we have seen that they are, in cases, spreading misinformation on someone's behalf, on behalf of a particular group, or sometimes in favor of a nation, especially the media had been playing a very significant role in both sides of the border, if we talk about our neighboring nation. How do you see it? How do you see 2025 in terms of social media influencing? Would it take us to a positive state of national unity, or do you think like mismanagement or spreading misinformation would put us into further deepening challenges in 2025?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question. Please indicate if you want to get the floor. All right, Dr. Manzoor.
Thank you. My question is to Mr. Shafqat Munir. You described very elaborately about the emergence of new technologies, especially AI and then the information technology. And also, you noticed that there is a tremendous development in rocket science, spearheaded by Elon Musk, that rockets can be used several times, and that will facilitate a free flow of information across the globe. In this milieu, in this situation, where our own foreign policy direction or trajectory is there? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mahmood, you have the floor.
I am Air Vice Marshal Mahmood Hussain, a retired Air Force officer, and currently I'm teaching aerospace science at the University of Aerospace and Aviation. My particular question is to Dr. Iftekhar Ahmed Chowdhury. Sir, you have said that 2025 will be like 1925, which means that you have drawn a very grim picture of this year. And you have also cited the example of E.H. Carr's 20 years crisis. Now, if you believe in E.H. Carr's 20 years crisis, then we have to say that no more dilly-dallying with liberalism. It is time for realism, because he had put too much of commitment to and conviction in real aspect of the global politics. But in his book, what he mentions about the three elements of power, first one is military power, the second one is economic power, and third one is propaganda power. Now, about the powers, in Bangladesh, I have seen that with economics and with narratives, we are quite familiar, but our society is very shy of talking about military power. Now, since I teach aerospace science, all academic, intellectual perspective of these sciences have a military fallout. He has mentioned about, Dr. Manzoor has mentioned about Elon Musk's rocket project, and we also talk about artificial intelligence. But the point is that we are extremely naive about what direction should our military follow. Now, we have so many commissions. We haven't had a commission on the military reform. And I can tell you, if you really want to advance, like Shafqat has said, on artificial intelligence, is first point of starting initiation should be the military institutions. Because in the military, the employment of artificial intelligence, because I'm an Air Force pilot, is so intense that that is where the first research initiative has to come. If you really want a direction in which our military should move forward, and all scientific and technological advancements have their military roots. This is my point. I would like to take your observation regarding this. Why the military power is so much neglected in our country. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, thank you. Next question, okay. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Gavin Tench from the British High Commission. My question to the panel is, well, first of all, thank you for very insightful presentations. And it strikes me that poor old Bangladesh is on the receiving end of a lot of these trends. So my question to you is, to what extent will global trends and indeed foreign policy feature in electioneering here if we are indeed going towards elections at the end of this year? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Admiral Lawal, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. I'm Rear Admiral Awal former ambassador and associated with the maritime think tank. I'll start with tariff. That's the, according to Donald Trump, he was listing his preferences: God, religion, love, and tariff. That's his list of preferences. And he said that in the dictionary, the most beautiful word is the tariff. And it dates back to his, when he was nobody in 1985. He wrote an article where he mentioned in those days, Japan was the target of the U.S. actions because of Japan's rise. And heavy tariff was imposed on Japan. And there was a lot of criticism, but he supported that. Somebody found out that narrative. So it's a big on. Now, the only thing is that to stop him, what could be the guardrail? In my assessment, is the U.S. population. If the tariff adds to the inflation, then he will understand this is one guardrail. And another is his geopolitical ventures, say the hydrocarbon, the oil. He said, baby drill, baby. And this drilling is not by the U.S. government. It has to be done by the oil companies. And it is to be decided by their boards. So they're not likely to listen to him unless the economics go with it. So my question to the panel, what do you think? Because if he has the upper hand in this respect, he will put restraint on Iran, the shadow fleets of tankers, and Venezuela, and all this access, the oil price is going to shoot up. So this is one scenario. In that case, he will have other upper hands in this. But on the other hand, if the oil price shoots up, then it will affect his popularity at home. So do you think that his reliance on this hydrocarbon exploration in USA could be in a way restrain on him in playing the geopolitics globally and put him on restraint on the tariffs, because tariff is the thing which Bangladesh will be also in there. To Shafqat, thank you for your deliberations. You have mentioned about the geopolitics of technology. Now there's a term I found in Forbes magazine is Muskonomics with Elon Musk. He has heavily investing on AI, XAI, to compete with OpenAI. And he is going to take data from X. I don't know how it will be, regulation-wise it will be possible, but heavy investment on that. And he is going on the broadband, satellite-based broadband and Telsa and all this thing. So how do you think this impact of, Elon Musk? He is not only talking about economics, he is talking of the British Prime Minister, the President of Brazil, and many other issues. Any talk on him, a reference from him, will have an impact. How do you assess that? Thank you.
Thank you. Elon Musk talks about everybody, including Tulip. Okay, Biplab, you have the floor.
Happy New Year and good morning to everyone. Thank you, BIPSS. And I am Biplab Kumar Purar from Supreme Court of Bangladesh. My specific question is to the panel that whether we are ready to face the trends of 2025. And the next question is there any initiative on behalf of the government yet to stop misinformation or propaganda between the two neighbor countries? Thank you, everyone.
Nasreen?
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks, Babe, for the vibrant start at the new year. So 2025, so we know that a year will be brimming with the possibilities and with challenges and changes. So I was reading the Forbes, so they wrote about this year that it will be from AI to climate change, from geopolitical, social changes, and they mention it will be like a roller coaster year. And they mentioned Donald Trump's term 2.0 could be the double-edged sword, so that how we will handle this Muskonomics, Elon Musk economics. So they are mentioning it as well. So our thinking is that how, as a global South country, Bangladesh will mitigate these challenges and changes. So my question is to specifically to Iffat Anjum, that from the economic perspective, how we will handle this situation where we have to maintain the economic crisis. In the same way, we have the strength for green molecules and economy. So can we keep emphasis based on our strength from Bangladesh side? So how we will go with this global trend in 2025? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sir, you have the floor. Yes.
Thank you so much, Babe, for having this great platform of having the dialogue today. As we move forward, the market will keep expanding. We remain as consumers. And if we see the neighborhood, we see in India there is a big tech hub. How do you see the prospect of Bangladesh actually become an emerging hub where will not remain just consumers, but creating infrastructure, creating the tech policies, tech clusters, and regimes for techs where we can actually create a platform where the Western companies can come and invest. And on top of being a consumer, we can probably start with service centers and gradually moving for assembly plants, having the manufacturing plants. So how do you see that potential and how we can align from the political parties to combine that with a policy framework in terms of foreign aspects? Thank you.
I suggest the political parties should have a tech conference with people who understand technology, so that all these ideas can be given out to the political parties. Maybe we shall take an initiative on that. We shall invite our political actors and the leaders to come together to talk about technology. Yes, please.
Okay, I think it's, my name is Pahani. I focus a lot on climate and I work with youth in Bangladesh. So I am concerned about Bangladesh. And I live in America and Bangladesh both, so I'm concerned about that too. But I think we're focused here on global trends 2025. But if we're going to talk about Trump 2.0, we are looking at global trends beyond that. We're in for a ride for 4 years. So I think I'd look at the bigger picture. It's going to be a very interesting ride, and I don't know what's going to happen. As far as Bangladesh is concerned, Trump has already shown that he is very interested in working with India. I don't know if anyone watched the inauguration. The person, Jai Shankar, I believe, was sitting right in the front. And so this is, what does this do for Bangladesh? Will the Americans even care about Bangladesh? I mean, that's really something to think about. So then are we going to side with the Chinese? I mean, where are we going to go? What are we going to do? Not just 2025, but like I said, beyond. So I'm very interested to hear the entire panel's perspective on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Kabir?
Very good afternoon to you all. My name is Humayun Kabir Bhuiya. I'm an unemployed journalist. Actually, if I were in charge, I would rephrase the title. Is like global effort to contain Trump tantrums. So, because I am sure the world will be very busy in containing Donald Trump's issue. So I am more worried about Washington than Dhaka, at least for next 4 years. And as far as global trends with regard to Bangladesh, I am very concerned, having looked at a news item today that says the Indian External Affairs Minister Jai Shankar, in his maiden meeting with Secretary Marco Rubio, he raised the issue of Bangladesh with him. So for a little while, USA under Biden administration tried not to see Bangladesh through the lenses of India. What I was given to understand that Bangladesh was an independent case to him, at least for a while. But now with Trump in the helm, at least for 4 years, if not 8 years, is USA going back to see Bangladesh through the lenses of India? So if that is the case, I think there is a very, it's an ominous sign. And I don't know how capable our foreign policy makers are to counter that phenomenon on part of Indians. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll now go back to our panel for them to respond. Mr. Shamin, did you want? Okay, we'll give you the floor.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And my name is Shamim Ahmed. I'm a retired ambassador. What I would say, it may be a little different from what we have been hearing now. As regards, I will make 2 comments, I will not ask any question. As regards Donald Trump, I think sometimes we tend to overestimate what he might or he might not do. Because a lot of what he will do and how successful he will be will depend on how much the people of the United States will benefit from his program. But he's here for 4 years, and after 2 years there will be midterm elections, and he might even become a lame duck president, because after 2 years, even the GOP will look for new leaders, and so it may be quite different. And as regards Bangladesh, I think what is important here is our evolving relations with India, and which currently is having a rough patch. And we'll have to see when the elected government comes, how they build up from there, because we have already heard recently the Indian Army chief saying that the relation with Bangladesh will take some shape after an elected government has been inducted in Dhaka. So these are the 2 points I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We'll now go back to our panelists for them to respond. We'll start with you, Dr. Chowdhury.
Thank you. All right. I might group the responses. I take some notes, of course, and I've learned a lot from what you've asked. But to give a sort of organized, structured response, maybe I'll take them in groups. But I'll start with Mahmoudin Bey, because you began with something that was at the core of what I have said. I've compared 2025 trends to 1925, which, as you rightly identified, was the period that E.H. Carr was addressing. He was, of course, as you know, there was a Marxist content to, neo-Marxist content to the way he explained it. He was writing at a time when the Tories were out of governance, and then the Liberals were coming in, and the British, the House of Lords was flooded with the Labour Lords and all that sort of thing. There was a huge social transformation taking place in Britain, and at a point in time when the elites in Britain tended to turn right, as you know, there was a lot of pro-Nazi sentiment among the British upper reaches of the British society at that point in time. So it was so on the one hand, our basic emotions remain constant, or rather constant, because they also change. Nothing remains constant forever. But what is changing in an enormous speed is technology. So in these historical progressions, what you have is 2 wheels moving, one very slowly and the other very rapidly. So in all movements, you have a balancing of the 2, if it were all possible. So what we see are reflections of the past as a pattern rather than in reality. So 2 situations will never be the same. Another point I want to react to, my basic forte is policy making. Whether I'm a civilian or in government, I've always focused on foreign policy, as I always shall. The point is, we, in the realm of policy making, those of us, what we call representatives of states, are confronted with a different situation now than we were some decades ago. You, sir, our British colleague mentioned that in 2025 it appears that we are at the receiving end of all the changes. Yes, indeed. What I have said and what I have analyzed is that, you see, the perception of sovereignty is also not constant. What was considered sovereign during the Cold War is there was a United Nations, there were those days 130 members and all that. All members were sovereign in terms of sovereignty equal, except perhaps for Ukraine, Belarus, and Soviet Union, which had 3 seats. However, but over time, when this umbrella of multilateral cover is gradually being eroded or removed, there is, what is evolving is differentiated sovereignty. We're not sovereign the same way. We're not sovereign as the way Jean Baudin saw sovereignty. Some are more sovereign than others. Bhutan is less sovereign than us, and we are less sovereign than Switzerland. I mean, there's a tremendous global stakes in territorial integrity of Switzerland. There is not so much global stake on the territorial integrity of Bangladesh, for instance. So the great challenge to the Bangladesh policymaker is to enhance Bangladesh's capacity to maintain its sovereignty and to be able to have the maximum maneuverability within your capabilities. So the challenges are great, and the challenges are forever changing. Many of you have spoken of whether America is looking at Bangladesh through Indian lenses and all that sort of thing. If I were an American policymaker, I wouldn't bother about all that. I would bother about is that region secure? Our position vis-a-vis China secure in that region? Who gives us more security? Is it the territorial integrity of India that gives us more security, or is it the territorial integrity of Nepal or the Maldives? So, you see, they would not look at countries in the same way as Alexander did not look at Macedonia or another region beyond. So, levels of sovereignty will be different. The challenges to the policymaker will be even more complex, because you will have to make up for the power gap by building your linkages. You're building your linkages, and even there you have a limitation. So the challenges for us are even more complex for us, the policymakers, as we progress. That is another thing. The other thing is the matter of technology. I mean, I'm philosophically interested in Elon Musk phenomena and this whole phenomena and Musk phenomena, and how America is putting right wing in America is putting the old American values in a different paradigm. You heard Trump mention manifest destiny yesterday. Manifest destiny meant movement of the population from the East Coast to California, right? That was the American manifestation, fruition of the American dream. Today, the manifest destiny is the planting the flags in mass. You see, so technology has brought a huge change to the same paradigm. The paradigm is manifest destiny, but the functions under the same paradigm is different. So the point is, you see, it's almost Heraclitean. I mean, you never step into the same river twice. Everything is changing. Paradigms are changing, your capabilities are changing, and when you are weak, your capacity to respond to stronger partners in the milieu would have to be enhanced, and therein will lie your credibility, your ability, your capacity, and your dexterity. You have to be more nimble-footed. To defend yourself will be more difficult at times when you are under such stress, stress of greater differences with perceived adversaries than when not. So therefore, it is not making our tasks any easier. Okay, elections come. for many countries, and including countries like us, what difference is there in terms of foreign policy? There are some nuanced differences depending on who comes into power, which political party comes into power. But basically, how do the middle classes in Bangladesh react to the rest of the world? And those are the foreign policy challenges. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Chowdhury. Iffat, your response?
Thank you, everyone, for the insightful questions. As most of the questions converges around the topic or the concern regarding Donald Trump, so I would like to draw the attention on one certain thing, that in terms of predicting the future, and both regionally and globally, I think we need to reconsider the previous regime that Donald Trump has endeavored, and what we have learned from those regime and those times of foreign policy behavior is that we need to understand the difference between political rhetorics and substantive policies. And political rhetorics or declaratory postures, there is a very common tendency or a frequent tendency to declare that I have a bigger nuclear button, or I have this sort XYZ. I will just solve the Israel and Hamas issue within one night, within 24/7. So this sort of total attitude or business attitude needs to be kept in mind before anticipating any substantive future regarding the Trump 2 regime. That is one concern. The another response would be about the context of propaganda and deep fake contents that has been initiated from the panel. I think in terms of that, we need to be really careful, as we have witnessed the severe or grave impact of this sort of misinformation and disinformation. The spreading of misinformation and disinformation specifically since last July. So I think substantive and coordinated policy preference should need to be organized, converging around these issues, and we can also expect to have our intelligence agencies to contribute in this regard. I think this would be my response on these two particular issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Iffat. Shafqat.
Thank you. Several specific questions, but I want to make some broad remarks as well. On Dr. Manzoor's question about foreign policy direction, I think this has already been raised before. There is a commission for every conceivable activity, but there is no commission on foreign policy and international affairs. There is also no commission on security affairs or armed forces either. Foreign policy needs to be a well thought out process, but too often in Bangladesh, foreign policy is a result of ad hocism. At times it appears to me that our foreign policy has become, we must do something that will irk a particular country or a group of countries, and not really based on any wider understanding of our interest or any wider strategy. So cutting your nose to spite your face cannot be a country's foreign policy. Foreign policy needs to be well thought out. Foreign policy needs to be based on clear guidelines and discourse. We don't see that yet. Our fervent hope is that when an elected government takes over, hopefully by the end of this year, we will have a very clear direction about what kind of foreign policy we want to pursue. Yes, there has been an increase in the remunerations of Bangladeshi diplomats, but I would have really liked to, and I'm sure that's very necessary, but I would have really liked to see a clear guideline on what our foreign policy priorities are. Do we need to increase our cadre strength of our foreign service? Do we need more embassies? What kind of policy should we pursue with the region? But we don't see that. What we see is basically a lot of ad hocism, a lot of wishful thinking, and constantly blaming one country or the other for our own problems. So I think that culture needs to change. As Dr. Chowdhury very rightly mentioned, a big power, a superpower, or a great power will ultimately look at its own interests. Did Biden administration really look at Bangladesh from an independent lens always? I mean, independent lens in quotes. If we look at Jake Sullivan's visit to Delhi, that tells us a very different picture altogether. Ultimately, the US administration or any superpower will look at its own geopolitical interests. What kind of a case we can make as Bangladeshis to them to safeguard our interests, the onus is on us. So I think those are the things that we really need to look at. I was quite hopeful after the monsoon revolution that Bangladesh will have a very clear-headed and a strategic direction in terms of foreign policy. Unfortunately, half a year down the road, I haven't seen that yet. So let's see how it all plays out. But our hope, our sort of aspirations are now pinned on a future elected government, because that government hopefully would be able to give us a new direction. To Major Nisar's question about disinformation. Disinformation, misinformation is an everyday reality for us. It is a result of the marginalization of mainstream media under the Sheikh Hasina regime that Bangladeshis started consuming all their information from social media. Now, there is a good thing and a bad thing here. At that point of time when the media was constrained, social media provided us with an opportunity to learn things that we would otherwise not be able to learn. But what we now see is that social media has essentially become a place where a lot of disinformation and misinformation is also originating, both from within the border, outside the border, everywhere. We cannot perpetually have a situation where our information, our analysis, our discourse, our thought process is shaped by people pontificating on YouTube. So I think the onus is also on us, on whether we want to be discerning consumers of information or we just want to consume anything. You talked about narratives appearing from other countries. Of course, that's a major challenge, disinformation and so on. The question I would ask is, what kind of narrative have we created? It has been 6 months almost since the revolution took place. Have we, at an official level, or at an unofficial level, have we really worked hard in creating our narrative? Have we presented that narrative to the world? Have our embassies presented that narrative to the world? Yes, we can accuse people from other countries for creating disinformation and misinformation, but where is our narrative? And when we talked about violent extremism, in that context, we always used to say that the violent extremists will always have their narrative. But where is our alternative narrative? I think the same question could be asked here as well. On Elon Musk and all the other associated commentary, I think we have to remember that in the Trump administration, the buck always stops with Trump. There were very powerful people in Trump 1.0. We don't even remember their name anymore. A rift has already emerged between Elon Musk and Trump over investing on AI. So while in January 2025, he is very powerful, but ultimately everyone serves at the pleasure of President Trump. So how he continues to remain powerful or what happens in the future is something we have to see. But I think it is very important for us in Bangladesh to understand these new global geopolitical realities. It is very important for us to remember that the Quad foreign ministers met Marco Rubio on his first day in office. So that really clearly shows the importance Quad will take in US foreign policy in the coming 4 years. And we have to really look at the geopolitical realities and identify our priorities accordingly. Unfortunately, I don't see that yet. As I said earlier, there's a lot of ad hocism, there's a lot of populism, and there's a lot of decisions being taken without keeping wider geopolitical and geostrategic realities at play. So I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Shafqat. Dr. Chowdhury, you had the last word. Just one point that I forgot to mention, because there was some talk of the role of the military. Many of you are interested in the military. You represent uniforms in different ways, or certainly strategies of your countries that you are representing here. in the post-Cold War period, militaries in third world countries had a specific position in the community. They were usually the most invested in element in the community. They were the best engineers, the best doctors, the best academics, the best statisticians within the community, and they had a role called, which was defined very well in a book written as early as, or early late or whatever, in 1962 by a man called Samuel Feiner, I think his name was. It was called Man on Horseback. Man on Horseback. Man on Horseback defined the role of the militaries in the developing world during the, so the military has a role far, far beyond what is generally perceived. It is not the same as police. You see, so there is a difference. Today, interestingly, as we go to an America which is becoming more and more isolationist, yesterday we saw Trump's message that we will win wars without fighting, which is the same as the Chinese used to say earlier on. In other words, I won't expand military footprint abroad. I will bring the military back into the country in order to address issues like immigration. So you see, you have a very strong institution in the community, and the picture that came down in the Pentagon was not that of a former political master. It was that of Milley, who was the chairman of the services. So the military will again have a differentiated role in all our communities in consonance with the requirements of the community. The less developed the political system, the more complex the role of the military will be. I will not say that it will be more or less, but it will be certainly complex, as we are witnessing in our own milieu. Thank you.
I just want to quickly address the point that Mr. Amin raised about Bangladesh becoming a hub for technology investment, so and so on. I think it's a great idea. I think there's a lot of potential. We are already doing an enormous amount of work in terms of freelancing. We will need to develop our infrastructure. We will need to develop our ease of business. We need to develop our regulations. And I mean, a great example is Singapore, because Singapore was able to identify very early on that data centers would become a major source of technological prowess, and they invested in that. So if we can have a clear policy, if we can have a clear guideline, and I'm very heartened that political parties are taking an interest in this, because ultimately political parties will have to understand how the policy making is done in this area. So I think there's a great potential. We have various technological hubs in and around us, or in our vicinity, so we could also benefit from that. But we will also have to greatly invest in scientific education. We'll have to greatly invest in technological education. For too long we had this slogan of digital Bangladesh, but nothing really happened on the ground. So I think we have to move away from sloganeering and really get into concrete action. But I think technology is the new frontier, and we have to embrace it. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of our deliberations, but it is quite evident from our discussion today that we are at a crossroad. We are at a crossroad for our geopolitical shifts, smaller countries like Bangladesh, so that our policies are formulated to meet the challenges that we are likely to face in 2025 and beyond. I'm happy that our young politicians took the time to come and attend. It'll be my intention to bring in more political actors to our next meetings, so they understand the issues that we are talking about, because it is them who are going to have to face the challenges. I thank you all for your presence here today and for the deliberations and the comments and questions that you made. A special thanks to our panelists for their excellent presentations, and please join me in thanking them for that. Please come back to our future roundtables and discussions. Our discussions are enriched by your presence, and we always value that. Now, please join us for a cup of coffee outside. Thank you. Thank you very much.